Yeah, so I'm gonna make this video today just kind of explaining how I wash my dirty razor and the products I use and what kind of technique I guess I use. Anyways, first I start with a pressure washer. I have a I should have brought it over here. It's a Stanley 2050 electric PSI. PSI is 2050. That's kind of like the name of it. It's got 1.4 GPM. And it's kind of just inside the range to use a foam cannon, and it works pretty dang good. But anyway, I start like on the underside of the fender wells, and the reason I start there, I know they say work from top to bottom, but the reason I start there is it takes the longest, and if I get everything else clean and I spray these, it usually tends to like spray everything else. Kind of the same with the inside. I usually do the inside after I do the fender wells. Sometimes, just depends on how dirty the inside is. And then after the fender wells, I'll just kind of do standard, like work from top from bottom. And then once I get pretty much all 90% of the mud off, I will take some of this and just spray on the wheels and pretty much everywhere underneath the fenders, front and back. And I'll use this and just kind of scrub underneath the fenders, and I'll use a variation of these for like the tires and the wheels. And then once all that's done, depending on how dirty like the actual motor is, depending on how dirty like the not the guard or anything, but depending on how dirty like the exhaust is covered and like the engine cover there, I don't know what exactly it is. I'm not that well versed in mechanics wise for these things, but I'll spray some APC on an all-purpose cleaner. I usually don't like to spray a whole lot just because that stuff is so strong. Anyways, after that, I'll fill this up. Usually fill it up beforehand, that way I don't have to take the water hose off the pressure washer. And I'll put some this wash and wax in, and I'll put about 4 or 5 ounces in the foam cannon. Hook it up to the pressure washer, just spray it down. I'll put about 5 ounces in, fill it all the way up with water. I try to use all of it. Usually I'm doing the foiler at the same time. But anyways, once I get that all covered, both the foiler and the razor all covered with the wash and wax, I'll just go over it with the mitt here. And this doesn't dry on, it doesn't leave soap suds as long as the water is mixed with this. It's not going to leave any soap suds, even if it's sitting in the direct sunlight. So I'll go over the whole thing, foiler and razor, and I'll come back, spray it all off. And you do get some water spots, mainly like on the windshield, because we have some pretty hard, dirty water here. It's not bad, but sometimes it's worse than others. Mainly on the windshield and on the roof, you get some water spots, but I'm not too worried about it. If that's the case, I'll show another product I use. It's called H2O Garden Gloss by Adams Polishes. And it's just kind of like a silicone sealant, I guess you could say. And I run it over with with a rag and just run it over the windshield. And if I'm bored enough, I'll do like the outside plastics with it too, just to kind of make it easier for the mud to come off. Most of the time I just leave it how it is after that, and I think you'll be pretty surprised. I'll throw up some pictures too. I think you'll be pretty surprised at how well just using that wash and wax does. But you can see my plastics aren't really that bad because I use that, and it darkens them up, and it doesn't it doesn't show any fading or anything. So I'll throw up a time lapse and get at it. So I ended up not using the APC. I was in a little bit of a hurry just because it was getting dark and there was a chance of rain. But anyway, I mean, it's not great, obviously. I could have rolled it forward a little bit and cleaned off the bottom side of the tires where I didn't get, but I try not to focus too much on like getting every small detail, just because I'm gonna go out probably next weekend and get it muddy once again. But usually I don't wash it like this every time. Usually I just wash it with pressure washer and water, just because you go through a lot of supplies and that stuff can get a little expensive. I think the wash and wax is, I think that's $14 a bottle. This is probably like 10, that's like 12, something like that. I'll put links in the description. I'm not affiliated with Adams, but I mean, I wish I was. I go through a lot of their stuff because I use it for my cars too. But, you know, it's still wet in some places, but, you know, it's not perfect. I could spend like another hour on this just making it look brand new, but just scrubbing it like I did, obviously scratches. There's no like graying. It still looks pretty decent for a few-year-old 2018 RZR. It still looks pretty decent. Obviously I didn't do too good of a job, but yeah, no like water spots fading. You know, usually if you wash it with water, you're gonna get more stuff like this, except all over. I'll throw a few pictures up. The roof doesn't look too bad. That's gonna water spot a little bit, but I got stuff to wipe that off with. Underneath, you know, no like specking of dirt and stuff like you would if you just wash it with water. A lot of people have that problem. And like these, I could wipe these down with rags and stuff, but you know, that's another level, you know. And the tires could have been cleaner, a few different things, but this is how I wash it. This doesn't look too bad. I'll probably, one of these days, I'll probably sit here and scrub on it and make it look good. And then it'll go right back to looking like that again. But this is how I wash it usually. If I wash it like this, usually, depending on how much I ride that month or so, it kind of works out to be once a month I wash it like this. Maybe once every 2 months, just depending on how muddy it is and how, you know, how I'm feeling. How much I think it needs to be cleaned. And obviously soundbar is waterproof. I posted that in the last video, or 2 videos ago. But yeah, it's the inside. The inside is one of the hardest places to clean, minus the back fender wells. Mainly because there's nowhere for the mud to go except in a little hole. It's better than the previous generation, like RZRs, how the 900s were. The 900 XPs. But I'm thinking about getting like floor mats. Obviously lower doors will help, those are coming. But I'm thinking about getting floor mats, that way I can just pick it up and knock most of the dirt out. The rear bed is a little bit of a pain. I don't really wash that because I don't want to get the mitt too dirty. Usually all the dirt clods here. It's sometimes a pain just because it's got all these little grooves, it splashes back at you. That's the same way with the fender wells. There's like all these little plastic grooves and stuff, and it splashes back at you and you get soaked. I'm soaked now, but you know, no big deal, part of it.